Hey y'all, Rossgath back here. We're going to be going over today the captain items that I totally promised you guys last week. Totally promised to start going over items, and I didn't. So this week we're going to be starting by going over captain items, and we're also going to be going over general item building strategies. So I'm going to start off with just a captain. I'm not going to build any items here because we're just focusing on like how to build these here, like the items themselves. Remember what I remember saying when I talked about captains last week. I'm not going to tell you specific builds because for every build that I tell you, someone's going to come up and tell you, hey, that doesn't work in such and such situation. No build is going to work in every single situation, which is why we need to know about item building strategies and knowing how we want to build these things. We have to have a good idea of what we're doing. So the first thing we're going to go over is my rules of creating a hero and item build. The first rule is what works for your hero. It's just not a good idea to build an item that doesn't work on the hero. For instance, a Shatter Glass is going to do literally nothing on Kensei. So you don't ever want to build that on him. He has no crystal ratios to take advantage of. And at the same time, building, while, say, something like a capacitor plate here is useful on Arden, it's not as useful as it would be on, say, Lyra, and Arden would need some other items to kind of back that up. So, with all of that said, the first rule is about picking the items and kind of like filtering down the very large item pool you have here of 30 some odd tier 3 items plus however many, 70 plus items as far as I remember. Filtering this item pool down into something and condensing it into something that works for your hero and will work for you throughout a game. Like, this is the first rule. The second rule is, what is your enemy building? Like, what heroes are your enemies playing, and how are they building? So, a good example of this is Krull. Krull has to have high attack speed, no matter what his build is. So, as a result, you know that you can counter build him by building something like an Atlas Pauldrons, which reduces his attack speed. Same thing with Rona. So high attack speed heroes are countered by Atlas Pauldrons, and maybe high CP. Maybe a great pick against a Ringo would be an Aegis because you can block his ult. These are just things that you need to consider when counter building. Also, say the enemy is building lots of armor and you're a weapon power hero, and you really you need to be able to tear it down. Say they've got 2 or 3 people have metal jackets. You might want to consider a bone saw. This is counter building effectively. Your second layer of building your item pool is kind of on the fly. What do I need to build to counter my enemy team? But more specifically, what am I countering? How am I countering the enemy heroes? Again, for another good example, do they have Grace? Do they have Rhyme? Do they have high sustain healing and fortified health barrier heroes? Build some Mortal Strikes, or build yourself some Mortal Wounds. Sorry, I forget the word. So second level is counter building. First one, what works for you. Second level, counter building. The third level is team building. What does your team need? What does your team need for you to have? For instance, let's say you need, as a captain, let's say the enemy team has Catherine on them. That's a big ult that really needs to get blocked. If you're playing the captain, you're going to need the Crucible to be able to block that. Or Adagio for his big ults. Things like that. That's not the only example, but again, what will work well for your team? Just one more example. Picking up Shiver Steel on someone like Krull could really provide a lot of control for your teammates when you go and gank from the jungle. So consider what are the items that will work well with your team. And the fourth rule is remember that none of these rules are just set in stone. You don't want to have a static build that you are automatically going to build every single time from the get-go. You should have an idea by the time the Halcyon, or not the Halcyon Fold, by the time Sovereign's Rise loads, you should have a good idea of your first two major Tier 3 items, and a good idea, I would say, of at least the next 5 to 7 minutes of items that you want to build. This can change. For instance, let's say I'm playing a top lane Grace, and I'm playing against a Gwen, a weapon power Gwen. I may really want to consider picking up some armor if, say, I get killed once, or maybe I have to teleport back to base. I may strongly want to consider picking up armor so that I can take the pokes that she sends at me. So go with, remember, the fourth rule really is don't forget to build to have a good idea of what you need, but don't let that determine your build from throughout the entire match. I see way too many people who will be like, I have to have a fountain on my captain as the first item. And while yes, in most cases that's the best choice, there are times where the fountain may not be the best option. Maybe you need a crucible first, or war treads first. So, having said all of those first four rules, which are maybe not less rules, more guidelines, because we're all pirates out here, I'm going to dig into captain items. There are a lot of captain items in the game, and especially with the three new captain items that got released with patch 3.4. I also kind of picked this because I know a lot of people want to know what these are about and what would be good decision making for how do I make a good decision as to building these items. So going top to bottom, let's start with Pulse Weave. Pulse Weave provides a ton of health, just as much as the Crucible, in fact, which previously was the highest HP item. Pulse Weave, now it shares it with Pulse Weave. So the passive here gives you bonus move speed, then you do a small, moderate amount of damage around you and slow people. This is really the triggered passive is not really why you're buying the Pulse Weave. Yes, it's kind of spiffy, yes, it's nice, but it's really easy for people to just force you to trigger it, and it's going to be down most of the time when you're trying to it's going to be down most of the time between team fights. Doesn't mean that it won't be useful, but I would say don't rely on this as an initiation tool. Rather, my focus here is the passive plus 10% base move speed, which is really awesome, and the plus 700 max health, which works great for heroes that scale with max health, such as Arden and his Vanguard. So looking at his Vanguard, remember, it scales with a portion of his max, with 30% of his max health, I think. So this Pulse Weave right here increases the strength of that barrier by 210. Pretty awesome. So remember, the health and the move speed is really what we're going for. The triggered passive is just kind of icing on the cake. Crucible is a bread and butter item. It should, I would say, the vast majority of your captain items be either your first or second item. Just because in 5v5 there are so many abilities that are worth blocking, it's just worth having around. The Crucible is the team-wide reflex block that you see come up every now and then, and it also, like the Pulse Weave, provides 700 max health, so again, for those health scaling abilities, it's really phenomenal. Capacitor Plate is the one that has definitely made the biggest splash in 3.4. It increases all heals and barriers, so that includes fortified health gains for people like Rhyme by 20%. It also makes it so that your heals and barriers grant other allied heroes, so it won't apply to yourself, but other teammates will get bonus move speed when you heal them or barrier them or help them in some recovery form. The great thing about this Capacitor Plate, other than the fact that it's just freaking crazy awesome, is it has 450 max health, 30 armor, 30 shield, and 15% cooldown reduction. This is your do everything item. It literally covers all of the stats that you could ever really want as a captain. You give you cool. The only thing that is really missing is energy, which, I mean, there's really not much we can do about that. This is actually causing some problems. I've noticed a trend in 3.4 that when I play a captain, I usually run low on energy. So we'll cover that a little later. But the capacitor plate is fantastic on your healer heroes. Arden is a great pick for it if you already have something like a Fountain of Renewal and Rook's Decree, which I'll go over in a little bit. And it's just great on high sustain heroes. So Rhyme, Krull, Glaive is an okay pick. I wouldn't really go for Glaive. I would say probably more, Rhyme and Krull are the two biggest ones. Alpha is also a very good pick for this. Obviously, Adagio, Lyra. Grace is also a great pick for this, though it's kind of like a tertiary item. It's also pretty good for her, even as using this as a kind of a defensive item, defensive/captainy item if you're going to build her as a damage dealer. It'll allow you to get throw around some bonus heals and still get some defense in. But I'm getting too deep into Grace. Again, going over items specifically here, because I am running out of time. So Rook's Decree, how this works is it is actually more effective HP than the Fountain of Renewal. If you don't know what the Fountain of Renewal is, we'll go over it in a second. It provides a barrier that scales with your bonus health to all of your nearby allies. The great thing is this barrier is only cooling down on each ally, not on you. So this means that if you trigger your one ability and you heal all of your and you barrier all of your, say, 2 allies, and another guy shows up and you do another ability, it will now barrier that third ally. So it's a lot more consistent than your Fountain of Renewal, and it scales better into the late game to provide more effective HP. Thing is early on, it's not as effective at covering your allies. So this is more of a late game captain item. The Fountain of Renewal is first or second pick still on most heroes. It's activate, you heal all of your nearby allies based on how much health they are missing. And it heals for 3 seconds. Technically the maximum amount of healed by that is about 600, which doesn't seem like much, but through most of mid-game, all the way up until everybody's about 10 or 11, level 10 or 11, it's pretty strong. So this also provides a solid amount of shields, so it can help you definitely against those mages and just passive crystal damage going around. Fountain of Renewal is definitely core on most captains. I would not consider passing it up, especially on captains that don't already have heals like Lance, or if you're playing Grumpjaw or Glaive as a captain, they would definitely need a Fountain of Renewal as the first item. Another item here, the last item in our defensive tab anyway, is the Atlas Pauldrons. This is more of a specific counter. It doesn't provide really hardly any additional armor over the coat of plates. What it does do, however, is it makes it really useful for countering high attack speed heroes, but you have to be close enough to them to use it. So while this is great on someone like, say, Arden, it's not great on someone like, say, Lyra, who wants to keep as much distance from everybody as she can. So remember, make smart picks on the item. That's kind of guideline number 1. Pick up the right item for the right situation based on your hero. So going into our utility tab here. Oh, good, I still have time. So going to our utility tab, I'm going to go over the other boots in other videos. But right now we're going to go over War Treads, Halcyon Chargers, Storm Crown, Null Wave Gauntlet, and Shiver Steel, as these are really the items I would consider that are actually utility in this particular place. The War Treads is just great. It is a great item to have, as it's basically just tacking on a bunch of health onto your boot slot, which boots is something you should already be picking up. So The extra health is great, has a great passive, and on top of that, it has a really good sprint, which is great for either initiating or getting your team away. The Halcyon Chargers, I've seen a little more use. It's a bit more situational than the War Treads, because you get a little bit more movement speed, and you have the longer sprint, but the big thing here is the extra energy and energy recharge that you may have problems with by building other pure defensive items. So I can see picking up the Halcyon Chargers if, say, your abilities are really important. And I'm just going to end this here for now, since it looks like the minions are going to kill my crystal for this video. But remember, if you one thing I haven't been talking about in previous videos that I'd like to say is remember to like and subscribe to this channel. If you guys really like my videos, then that's the best way that I know to keep making them, and that people really enjoy them and they find them